Welcome back to Paranormal Perspective. I'm John Lorden, and joining me as always is...
Christy Arnhart.
This is the show where Christy looks into a paranormal or paranormal adjacent topic. She presents the evidence and proof that she can find, trying to pull me back from the edges of skepticism. I try to apply some logic, critical thinking to these situations, and we do this in front of a live stream audience. We let them vote on who the winner is for that particular topic. But today's episode also special because this is the week of Halloween, and it's also the finale for season 1 of Paranormal Perspective. Christy, how do you feel after this will be the 53rd episode?
It's crazy. It doesn't seem like we've done 53.
It's been an insane year, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Like just all the different stories, all the stuff that we've looked into on this show.
And, I got to go ghost hunting. We're going to have so much more next year.
Yeah, we're just getting started, and we will be back in January of next year, of course, with the start of season 2. But we got to get to today's episode. Christy, what are we talking about today? And what's the question for the audience?
Today, we're actually talking about the origins of Freddy Krueger. And our question will be, did the Tsog kill, or was it mental illness?
Did it say that again? Did the what?
Tsog. It's D-A-B.
Okay.
T-S-O-G.
Okay.
Two words.
I'm gonna need some help. Let me get the poll going here. So did spell it again for me?
D-A-B. T-S-O-G.
Okay. And did they do what?
Was it the Tsog or illness that killed the Hmong?
Okay.
And Hmong is spelled H-M, I think O-G. Hmong.
I think it's H-M-O-N-G. We actually have
O-N-G, it does. It has an N. You're right.
Yeah. We have a big Hmong community in St. Paul out here.
Yes,
okay.
I read about that.
What aspect of the question would be paranormal, just so the audience is clear?
Well, the Tsog is a nightmare creature that kills you while you sleep by terrifying you to death.
Now we're clear. We're certainly clear. Okay, absolutely. All right.
Well, when I think about Halloween, there's always 3 things that I think about. Or 3 characters, I guess. Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, and Freddy Krueger. Those are the 3 movie series that I love to watch. My favorite characters right there. Jason is scary because he's like a juggernaut, okay? He will come after you and not stop.
Yeah.
So that's scary enough. Michael Myers can drive a car to come get you, and he'll decide who in your family he's going to kill. He's creepy now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I moved I closed the window that had Michael Myers. Let me bring him back real quick. Yeah. Copy link. Freddy wants to show up twice, so he must know what today's episode is about. All right, here we go.
He does.
Okay.
Because the one that bothered me the most was Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm.
It really freaked me out that he could get into your dreams and influence them and kill you through those.
I was a huge Freddy Krueger fan as a young man. And it's weird to say fan because my fascination with him was kind of twofold. The first was I was scared of him. And if he ever showed up in my life, I wanted him to see all the posters of him in my room and be like, oh, this is a fan of mine. I'm going to leave him alone. I'm okay with this kid. Like, honestly, that was
he likes me.
Yeah, that was part of the logic. Because the thing that was so scary to me about Freddy is, like, yes, just the basic thought of could someone, like if you died in your sleep, would you die in real life? Like there's just an innate fear there that I think touches on something for all of us. Mm-hmm. But he and the way he was portrayed by Robert Englund was having so much fun.
I know.
During these gruesome, horrible acts and tapping into people's personal beliefs and fears and then making them happen to those people. And he's just having the time of his life while he's cracking jokes right before he kills you. You know, like it's a very that's what's scary to me, because in terms of that being a representation of humanity in some way, like how bad can humanity get? Like that is, I'm enjoying torturing and murdering people. It's really, really dark.
Freddy's disturbing.
Yeah.
And I have always wanted to meet Robert Englund.
Yeah, me too.
I just want to shake his hand and tell him how many years he terrified me as a child, and still as an adult, because I'm still looking into this stuff,
Yeah, the other thing that threw me about Robert Englund, though, was his other big role at the time, which was one of the aliens on V. And he was he was like a good guy. He was this super sweet guy. He falls in love with one of the humans. It was just a total different role. So yeah, he's definitely a talented actor.
Oh yeah. I wish he could still do the role, but I hear he's got so much arthritis now that he's not able to do the hand movements and things like that anymore.
Yeah.
But Freddy is not the only creature that will get into your dreams while you're asleep.
Okay.
So what could be so scary that it inspired Freddy Krueger? Well, a lot of us know this story. There were different influences in Wes Craven's life that inspired him to write A Nightmare on Elm Street and to create the character of Freddy Krueger. Now, he based this on the death of Hmong refugees at the end of the Vietnam War. It was one case in particular. Craven said he read a news article about a Cambodian boy. I'm not sure that it was a Cambodian boy, but regardless, it's within this set of refugees.
Okay.
This boy, his family fled Pol Pot's genocide. Once they got to America, not long afterward, so the boy died, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the story as far as I know it too. And
yeah,
more than that, he was actually scared of falling asleep. There was he had somehow come into this fear, this belief that if he died in his sleep, that he wasn't going to come out of it. And I don't know if is that part of this, mythology that we're talking about today? Was there a particular reason that he was scared?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't elaborate on this child, but it explains the whole mythos behind why they're dying and why they're afraid.
Okay.
Now, this article in particular, I never could actually find one about a young Cambodian boy. The one that I ran into was a New York Times article.
Okay.
And it was talking about a Hmong family of 10. They moved to the U.S. Not long after, their father, who was 47 years old, stayed up one night late watching TV with his uncle and went to bed before morning came. Well, his wife remembers hearing his breathing becoming labored while they were asleep. So she woke up and could see that he couldn't breathe. She tried to wake him up and was not able to, and he died in his sleep. They've looked at these people. They have done autopsies. They've done everything they're supposed to. They can't figure out why they're dying like this. And it's not like it's a huge group of people. We're talking about some Asian sects. And it's just let me just elaborate on this a little bit.
Sure. And let me know when to flip pictures, because I don't know how these are fitting in. So you let me.
You can start showing the pictures of the Hmong people next.
Okay.
Because they're just beautiful people. Look at this. Their culture is so neat. I just love it. We've got several pictures of them just being, in society and whatnot. I think they're just awesome. They really are. And you never hear about these people. And that's a travesty, because what they did for us was incredible. So the Hmong are an indigenous group of people in East Asia and Southeast Asia. PBS.com tells us that in the late 1960s, when the Vietnam War spread into Laos, the United States recruited the Hmong to fight against communism. Now, wanting to hold on to their own land and independence, the Hmong got in there with them. They fought with the U.S. There were 30,000 men. They fought ground war. They flew combat missions. They directed airstrikes, rescued downed American flyers. fought behind enemy lines, gathered intelligence. I mean, what they did was incredible, and we don't hear about it. So, and especially when you hear that the Hmong died, their rate of death was 10 times higher as that of American soldiers. I don't know if they were sent into the worst first or exactly how that happened, but unfortunately, they were the first ones to die. Now, that just accounts for the soldiers. That doesn't account for the families, because their villages were bombed, they were burned out. So you've got women, children, elderly, you name it, that are dying in these communities as well. So I don't actually know what the number of deaths are. My neighbor is actually a refugee from this time, and just to hear him talk about how they had to flee and whatnot, it is heartbreaking, and it is very scary, because that honestly could be any of us if we're not careful. Now, to say that this was stressful for the Hmong refugees, that's an understatement. They come from this horrific war situation, and now they've got to flee everything they've ever known. Well, majority of them came to the U.S. And as they started coming into the U.S. and settling, U.S. doctors started to notice an unusual condition that only affects the Hmong men. It's usually a median of 33 years old, but you do get people who are older and younger. It's just a median age. They were dying in their sleep. Now, it's the same thing as the story we just told. The family will hear someone call out, hear their labored breathing. They can't wake them up, and they die. Paramedics haven't been able to revive them. They actually didn't think that the situations were as dangerous as they were, because none of us had faced anything like this before. The Hmong people had dealt with it within their communities, but we didn't know anything about it. And to make it even weirder, not only are these people incredibly healthy, there's not anything wrong with them that the autopsies can find, but these deaths always happen between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. That's creepy. Yeah. That makes you afraid to go to sleep. So you see why some people weren't. Now, there are a lot of theories about this going around, but one of the most prevalent theories is that there's a specific defect in the men's hearts in the Hmong community, that these large amounts of stress, it doesn't bring on a heart attack, but it's like it shocks their heart and it stops. So I can't imagine what would be more terrifying than waking up and finding your loved one that way. But what about the loved one? Well, the Hmong believe that there's a creature called Tsog, which is known as the night terror or the nightmare death. There's different spellings for this, but this is the one that I'm using and pronouncing correctly, I hope. Most cultures, we all have nightmare creatures. We have the old hag syndrome, even though she doesn't really try to kill you. But in Asian cultures, their nightmare creatures kill them in their sleep by terrifying them to death. Doctors believe that, this is silly. Science had to have a word for this, okay? They came up with sudden, unexpected nocturnal death syndrome, or SUNS. So anytime a male from these communities dies suddenly in his sleep like this, that's what it's labeled. They have no idea what it is. They have no idea what causes it, nothing. But they've at least put a name to it.
Yeah.
Well, the Hmong, the women, knew what was happening to their men. When you're unable to take care of your family, your ancestors that have already passed, when you're unable to perform the rituals and services to help them in the afterlife, the Tsog is sent after you to take care of it. So by moving to the United States and trying to save themselves, they actually brought this creature onto them. And they had just a ridiculous amount of people. The Center for Disease Control started tracking these deaths in 1981, and a New York Times article from January of 1987 states that since April of 1983, at least 130 Southeast Asian refugees have died due to suddenly dying in their sleep with no cause, or that really kind of gets to you. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
how do
looked
you?
that up because I was just curious. What is the average time of people's deaths? And Gemini came back with the average time of death is around 11 a.m., as people tend to be
Really?
most likely to die in the morning hours. But there's an article at Harvard Medical School that says there's even a circadian rhythm of death. So that in general, the population, people tend on average to be most likely to die in the morning hours. Sometime around 11 a.m. is the average time. Isn't that
See,
interesting? I haven't, and
it's
the
I had no
example you're
idea.
giving us is outside of that scope, obviously.
hmm
Um,
And it's very specific to these people.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, they've tried everything to track it down. Is it malnutrition from living in the villages? Was it extreme stress from having to, deal with the war and then move from one place to the other? They did actually have some people who survived. Now, I don't have the specifics of how, if it was through medical attention or if they were able to come out of it, but they say it was a horrifying dream experience in which they were attacked by a kind of creature that tried to kill them by sitting on their chests and forcing the air out.
Oh, jeez.
The survivors said they experienced paralysis, even though they can remember hearing the noises of the house, people breathing around them. So, again, it seems so familiar. It's like old hag with a vengeance.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah, all of the pictures that you're seeing, I couldn't find any good representations of this creature, probably because it takes the form of your worst nightmares
Yeah, yeah. Well,
to
and
help bring this about.
obviously culturally, there's media being created around this as well. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, there we go, guys.
Man.
I mean, yeah, I'm totally on the Dasso boat. There are just every culture in this world has some type of old hag. We all have superstitions about dying in our sleep, how we can and how we can't. This, I can only imagine the blow that these people felt having to leave their homeland and then to be pursued with a vengeance for something that they couldn't help. That's scary. And it's still happening today.
It's so weird. I mean, there's an article I'm looking at Hmong American Experience or hmongamerican.org from
Mhm.
October 2022, and yeah, they're talking about this Sons. There was a peak in terms of the deaths happening, yeah, between 81 and 82. Man, it seems like it has to be related to kind of the war time
Mhm.
pressures and or the migration that happened around that with so many of
Mhm.
them fleeing, and maybe I don't know, like what, it's so weird, like and it's, I mean, even here, like they're saying, it's still not understood. Medical research has not provided a clear explanation for these deaths. Is it as
No.
simple as there was some enzyme that they had access to back in their homeland, and when they moved away from it, like, they got physically sick in some way? Or is it when they came to America that, the health, the shock,
Preservatives and
yeah,
all that.
exactly, the shock to their body in terms of diet changes and stuff like that. But why would there only be a peak? And that kind of thing, you would think they'd be able to figure out over the years and be like, hey, we've kind of drilled it down and we understand it better now. And I'm not
Unless
seeing
with
that.
it happening, no. And with it still happening today, to me, it feels like that this entity is still tracking down descendants of those that came over and didn't keep up their obligations.
Yeah,
Which, whoa, you know? But
yeah,
they've tried looking at so many different things. They've even looked at the type of chemical warfare that was used during Vietnam, and the kind of illnesses and defects that it causes are not what they're seeing here.
yeah, yeah.
And it's
And
and
again,
only the men.
right, right. Which does seem to lead you back to the thought that it was tied to kind of the wartime operations and the stresses that they had gone through.
Yeah, but the new people today they don't have those stresses and they're still dying.
And that's, well, I mean, there is something to be said about, you know, generational trauma
Hmm.
that can be handed down. And even hearing the story and just having that innate fear because you had a relative, maybe your grandfather or an uncle, or maybe even your father, that passed away in that bizarre, you know, way. That could
Hmm.
be traumatic in itself and affect your health as well. But man, there is no research angle I can think of to kind of push on this, because the science has been laid on this and they can't answer it.
And that's so sad. I mean, if it's scientific, we could find a way to stop it. If it's supernatural, I don't know. And I don't know what their culture's like in that way. You know, I know here you'd cleanse and things like that. You try to somehow make it right. Well, there, and I've got a picture in here of a Hmong shaman who's actually conducting a cleansing of somebody's house.
Okay.
And it's just it doesn't matter how many years have passed. All of this still follows them.
Yeah.
Haunts them.
Well, I can see why, off reading or hearing about that story, why it would grab the attention of someone like Wes Craven, who's trying to think
Yes.
of how to scare us. But yeah, I'm looking more into this article over at, well, Gemini's response about this, which I wish that they would just give me the article this is coming from. But the Hmong have a high prevalence of sleep disorders, including sleep apnea, sleep paralysis, nightmares, and other rapid eye movement related sleep abnormalities. These disorders may play a role in Sun's attacks. So they seem to have theories around that. And they are noting that, you know, if you have a family history of sudden death while sleeping, like that's a risk factor, is what they're noting here as well.
Oh, yeah.
But that should be an average across people of all types. Like that wouldn't be, you know, there's something about this particular culture that's being affected by this more. So what is that? What's that factor?
Right. And they have done extensive autopsies. They've looked at their hearts, they've looked at their brains. They cannot find anything wrong, anything that would cause this to happen.
Yeah.
Because I know there was one guy in particular, when the Hmong started falling after they got to the US, he got several of the different bodies and was able to actually look at each one of them in detail, and he could not come up with anything.
Yeah. So it peaked in the early 80s, and has it tapered off to a point where they're now kind of matching the national averages for deaths of this kind?
That I couldn't find.
Okay.
All I could find is that the community still suffers these problems, although not as many as they did when refugees first came over.
Okay. Well, here I've found at the National Library of Medicine, let's see here. Refugee stress and folk belief, Hmong sudden deaths. This is an abstract from a paper that was done. Since the first reported death in 1977, scores of seemingly healthy Hmong refugees have died mysteriously and without warning from what has come to be known as SUNs. To date, medical research has provided no adequate explanation. This study is an investigation into the changing impact of traditional beliefs as they manifest during the stress of traumatic relocation. So they're kind of pointing to that also. In Stockton, California, 118 Hmong men and women were interviewed regarding their awareness of and personal experience with a traditional nocturnal spirit encounter. An analysis of this data reveals that the supranormal attack acts as a trigger for Hmong SUNs. So they're actually kind of taking a look at it from that belief structure as well, and maybe that being a trigger in some way.
And I could see how it would be.
Yeah.
I could see how it would be, but they're still saying, you know, that this feeling, this creature that they think is there, whatever it is causing it.
I mean, to understand like the cultural impact that has happened there, what it's like for those families to flee, like, you know, literally for their lives, the shock of them coming to a completely different way of living, and maybe not feeling integrated very well, not feeling comfortable with their new surroundings. You know, is that going to lead to impacted sleep? I would believe so. And
Impacted, but not death.
Yeah, but impacted sleep does impact your health very, very quickly, in numerous ways. So but yeah, I mean, to your point, and because this is outside of the realm of normal data that they would have about those types of deaths across multiple cultures, it's clear there's something going on here in particular. All right. Well, we put the question to the audience. Is it supernatural or is it illness? And the audience is still sticking with illness. 62% say that it's illness. It's not a supernatural cause. I personally am of the belief that the supernatural cause is playing some role in the illness. I think I'm with them. I do think there's an illness. I don't think that there is some spiritual creature jumping from person's nightmare to person's nightmare and taking their lives. But the belief of that, I do think, is clearly having an effect. And honestly, even the limited stuff that we did just on these quick searches that I pulled is also kind of pointing in that direction. You know, like there's scientists that are saying, hey, we can't explain it using those methodologies, but we do know that there is this cultural belief structure around this, and could that be playing a role in some way in this? And I think to that you have to say yes, especially not having any, you know, like, oh, there is a clear difference. All of a sudden we were noticing that their cholesterol was through the roof once they got out here, or, you know, some kind of obvious cultural shift or environmental effect from their culture moving. Man, I had no idea that there was any backstory based in reality to inspire that thought of Freddy Krueger. But yeah,
and
scarier.
that's and as somebody who's had sleep paralysis before, now I didn't have an old hag sitting on my chest, but every time I've ever had that happen, there's a presence in the room with me, a black figure, like a shadow person, and they're always there. And it is something. It's not a person made up in my dream. I feel the presence, and it's a very oppressive, heavy presence. It's scary. You don't even want to look at it.
Yeah.
So I totally believe this.
Yeah.
And to what you say, yeah, there's probably some type of medical condition roped into it, but not one we found yet.
But that's what's silly. Like, you know, I think those types, I think we have good enough science to be able to identify something as obvious as that. I think the autopsies at the time would have been conducted in a way where there'd be information still available to scientists currently looking at it, where they could analyze it and say, like, oh, here is a noted spike that we're seeing in this particular, you know, physiological thing with them. And they're not finding that, which is what's really...
No.
Because I am unsettled, we're not going to run the John touting his success video, because I don't feel like I was successful in anything there.
I don't get spanked this time.
No. And I do think that there is something to belief is powerful. Belief can be a very, very powerful thing, to the point of several previous episodes we've looked at where, like, you know, the seance that they were doing for a fictional character. Like there's very clear examples of belief being very, very strong. Maybe this is the best example that we've seen yet, but maybe not. We're only at the end of season 1 here. So yeah, either way, if you are watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, any of them this week for Halloween, know that the story that helped inspire that is, to me, maybe a little scarier because it's based in reality.
Yeah.
Well, Christy, thank you so much for your hard work on today's episode. Thank you for your work on every episode for this season. Enjoy the holidays.
Yes.
And
everyone enjoy the holidays.
We will be back with all of you guys in January. Please come back, and we're going to do this again. Run it for another year.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
All new creepy things, all new ghost hunting, all kinds of stuff.
That's it. We'll see you next time on Paranormal Perspective. See you on the other side of the year. See you in 2025.
Yeah. Bye.